We get to see the maple trees, maple sugar on the maple leaves. We get the biggest wheat fields growing tall. In Canada, where we see the reversing falls. In Canada, we get to see them all.
This was another significantly historic week with the announcement of a ceasefire reached between Israel and Hamas, minutes before Joe Biden gave his farewell address to the nation. But parallelly, in Canada, a significant event took place too, here in Ottawa. Called by the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, as chair of the Council of the Federation, provincial first ministers met with Prime Minister Trudeau to discuss our response to the tariff threat made by the megalomaniac.
An excellent conversation today from around the table with passionate Canadians who are proud to represent very different regions of the country, but who are all united on one thing, which is we will stand up for Canada. We will protect Canadians. We will make sure that we are there to show what this country is made of. At the same time, we've also agreed that no one region of the country should disproportionately bear the burden of standing up for all other Canadians. We have made it very clear that everything is on the table as potential responses, but we've also been very, very clear that it has to be fair across the country. If the American administration moves forward with its plans on tariffs, it will first and foremost hurt American citizens and American consumers, but it'll also hurt Canadians. And Canadians need to stand together to make sure we're there for each other, particularly those who may be carrying a heavier load than others because of what the American administration.
Speaking to reporters afterward, Trudeau vowed a strong response should the 25% tariffs be imposed, saying that the burden should be shared by all provinces and regions, that last being a jab at Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith, who was the only one out of all of the leaders who would not sign on to the joint statement to continue to work together and leave everything on the table.
There's never been a time that's more important for Canadians to be united.
Mostly united, perhaps not all.
I will point out that Danielle did join us for the conversation and contributed significantly.
Alberta's Danielle Smith joined virtually from Panama. A few days ago, she met Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, a trip she made without telling the federal government or other premiers.
We didn't get a heads up, no. I'm interested in learning more.
Smith refused to sign Wednesday's joint statement among the federal and provincial governments.
There will always be robust discussions around this table. Everyone has a job that is defending the interests of their own constituents, their own industries.
Smith posted her explanation on social media, criticizing Ottawa for continuing to float the idea of cutting off energy supply to the U.S. and imposing export tariffs.
That's her choice. That is her choice. But I have a little different theory. I have a different theory that protect your jurisdiction, but country comes first.
She blamed Ottawa's unwillingness to rule out export levies or restrictions on energy exports. She said in a post on X following the meeting, "Federal government officials continue to publicly and privately float the idea of cutting off energy supply to the U.S. and imposing export tariffs on Alberta energy and other products to the United States." Well, Smith made headlines and raised some ire last week too when she popped up unofficially at Mar-a-Lago like a haggard Canadian Mary Poppins, somehow under the impression that she could soothe cranky Donnie's diaper rash, offering him cheap oil if he promises to call her governess. It was a shameless act of self-importance and an obvious attempt to undermine the PM and the party leaders, presuming to speak for Canada and Canadian interests, making side deals while taking selfies with her sellout buddies Jordan Peterson and Kevin O'Leary.
Trump's Florida estate Saturday night, and again Sunday morning, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she pled her province's case.
She certainly has taken the approach that, being friendly with Trump is likely to help Alberta's cause, and so this is, I suppose, consistent with that.
Premier dangles carrots. The Prime Minister again talked sticks in an interview that aired Sunday on MSNBC.
As we did last time, we are ready to respond with tariffs as necessary. We are the #1 export partner of about 35 different U.S. states, and anything that thickens the border between us ends up costing American citizens.
Did she really think that he'd give her a second glance? She's definitely not his type. She's not a billionaire. I'm sure he forgot her even before she left the room. While Ontario's Premier Doug Ford has also been appearing on all the wrong places on right-wing leaning news programs and playing Mr. Tough Guy while the Mar-a-Lago moron ignores him completely, at least he did have some authority to speak as the council chair, and he wore a cool hat too.
Call it the Battle of the Ball Caps. In one corner, the lid Trump made famous, and in the other, a new Canadian contender proudly promoted atop Premier Doug Ford's head.
This is about everyday Canadians standing up for their country.
The message, simple, bold, and embroidered, created by an Ottawa-based branding company that's seen a sudden crush of online orders after Ford donned a cap himself.
A real thrill, very proud to be Canadian, very proud to be an Ontarian.
The guy behind the company, Liam Mooney, used to be a political fundraiser.
I would consider it a privilege to be taken over by the United States of America.
He and his partner were repulsed by comments made by a Fox News host to Premier Ford last week and thought this response would resonate with fellow Canadians.
We heard the way that Jesse Waters was talking about Canada, this idea that it would be a privilege to be an American. Well, I've got news for those folks. It's a privilege to be Canadian.
Well, last week's story was former BC Premier Christy Clark's pratfall as she attempted to re-enter national politics, getting caught claiming she was never a conservative during a live CBC radio interview. She was forced to say that she misspoke and quickly retreated from the leadership race.
After organizing for months, former BC Premier Christy Clark announcing she will not seek the Liberal leadership, and with it the title of Prime Minister. Clark writing in a statement, "While we have come a long way in a short time, there's simply not enough time to mount a successful campaign and for me to effectively connect with Francophone Canadians in their language."
Many senior members made it very clear that the leader needs to be bilingual, and she acknowledged herself that her French is not at that level yet.
Clark also bowing out after struggling to answer questions about why she took out a Conservative Party membership.
Well, our own outgoing leader Justin Trudeau also made the rounds on network news shows, but to top them all, liberal leader hopeful Liberal leader hopeful Mark Carney was interviewed by an enthusiastic Jon Stewart on his show, giving a huge boost to his candidacy, which will be formally announced this week in Edmonton, Alberta, where he grew up. Ain't that a kick in the pants, Pipsqueak Polyev?
Be likely the choice of the current governing party, which is the Liberal Party.
And you are of the Liberal Party?
I am of the Liberal Party, yes.
Are they looking for a new leader?
I think they might be, John.
Sir, may I recommend to you, with your charm and debonair wit, yet strong financial backbone, that you offer yourself have you offered yourself as leader?
I just started thinking about it when you started.
Just now?
Yeah,
Gonna carny your ass. Womp womp. His bid for the seat had been expected since Trudeau resigned, with many saying that he's Trudeau's preferred choice, or Trudeau 2.0 for better or for worse. Will he be able to resuscitate the Liberal Party, or its chances in an election, or is it too little too late? Seen as a party outsider who's never held elected office, Carney is an economist and banker who served as governor of the Bank of Canada and later as the governor of the Bank of England from 2013 to 2020. Some saying he's so much of an outsider that he holds 3 passports and has been absent over much of the last decade. Other names in the race are, of course, former Finance Minister and Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland and Government House Leader Karina Gould, G-O-U-L-D. The last day for announcing candidacy is January 23rd, with the race to conclude by March 9th. And until then, in another juxtaposition to next week's nauseating inauguration unfolding in D.C., Prime Minister Trudeau will hold a cabinet retreat focused on defending Canadian interests and strengthening Canadian-U.S. relations to make unequivocally clear the mutually beneficial trade and security relationship the two countries share.
Donald Trump is taking up a lot of space at Canadian tables like this one. Quebec's economy minister met Friday with business leaders and heard firsthand the pain they'd feel if hit with Trump's tariffs.
Many of our businesses export in the U.S. Some of them export only in the U.S.
Almost across the board, every sector of the Canadian economy depends on trade across the border. Well, Ottawa's response to Trump's 25% tariff threat appears to be coming Monday. The fall economic statement will include a slate of measures to tighten control at the border.
We'll be investing in technology, in drones, in helicopters, and aircraft, and we'll also be increasing the personnel at the border.
One expected measure is an increased presence of RCMP patrols along the border, but some provinces are suggesting going even further. Alberta's setting up a special patrol unit. Other provinces have called for deploying conservation officers, even soldiers. Saskatchewan's premier is suggesting folding the entire Canadian Border Services Agency into the Canadian military.
And then allow your military to help with some of the short-term staffing challenges that we have in that space.
Now, the other side of Canada's response has been the tough love approach. Ontario's premier has countered Trump's threat by himself threatening to cut off electricity exports to the U.S. Doug Ford's also suggesting Trump doesn't have the support he thinks he has.
But every congressperson I speak to, or governor or senator, I'm not hearing the same thing.
Oh, and speaking of security, the RCMP confirmed this week that Black Hawk helicopters and drones have been deployed as part of the $1.3 billion funding allocated to strengthening border security. And hey, what do you know? We already caught a dangerous criminal illegal and sent him back where he came from. I bet he gets a slap on the wrist and possibly a cabinet position. Until next time, do the things. Stay tuned for more on Political Drain Canadian Edition.
Follow us on all these things you see here, and our link tree is in the description. Maybe even get some merch.